About seeds. Without seed plants, life as we know it would not be possible. A seed is the reproductive part of a plant. It is what we plant in the ground and from which a plant grows. There are five types of seeds, about which we will learn in detail. There's a quote from Carol Turner which is quite interesting. There's nothing quite as miraculous as growing an entire plant from one tiny seed. So now let's see all types of seeds in details. So the first on our list is heirloom seeds. And heirloom is anything that is passed down from generation to generation. The seeds are grown to maturity, prevented from cross pollination, and that preserves the genetics for the next year. Heirlooms are reliable because they have been grown for so many years. Their yields, growth habits, disease resistance, and other bits of information can be assessed to safely say what is to be expected when the crop is grown. Heirlooms are the most desirable because they can be saved from year to year and save money over time if you know how to save seeds. Next is organic. Organic seeds are grown without synthetic pesticides, herbicides, and synthetic fertilizers. So, what are the characteristics of organic seeds? They are grown without the use of pesticides and they are rich in nutrients. Third, non GMO. Non GMO seeds are cultivated through pollination. They can be bred two different ways, as hybrid seeds or open pollinated seeds. Non GMO, it usually means that the genetic makeup of the plants has not been altered. Fourth, GMO seeds. GMO stands for genetically modified organism. So what are GMO seeds? Instead of being bred in a garden, GMO seeds are bred by biologic engineers who apply modern biotechnology techniques, often called genetic engineering, in a lab. In general, genes are taken from one plant that shows a desired trait or quality and transferred into the genetic code of another plant. Fifth is hybrid. Hybrids and crossbreeding are genetic manipulations, just like GMOs. The only difference is that they are done in the laboratory. Farmers and gardeners have been cultivating new plant varieties for thousands of years through selective breeding. They did this by cross pollinating two different but related plants over 6 to 10 generations, eventually creating a new plant variety. By selectively cross pollinating related plants in this way, farmers could create varieties that were healthier and could survive climate, soil, weather, and pest problems. So these were the five type of seeds. You can buy these seeds based on your requirements. However, you might be surprised to know that at higher level in agriculture, farmers either use hybrid or GMO seeds. The reason behind using these two types is to get good quality and quantity yield. Hybrid and GMO seeds give amazing results if all crop requirements such as nutrients, temperature, pH, humidity, etc. are met. So now we have a word of caution while buying seeds. Now something which is worth mentioning is that there are a lot of online sellers that classify seeds as hydroponic seeds. You need to understand that there is no reason to search for this because any seeds are suitable for use in a hydroponic system. Just the tag of hydroponics makes it costly unnecessarily. Also, avoid buying from Amazon and Flipkart as they are aggregate e-commerce websites. Try to buy from a dedicated gardening store online. However, the most recommended mode is buy from local nursery or authentic seed seller as it saves time and money. If you want to buy online, then we recommend All That Grows and ugao.com. Note, this is not a paid promotion. I am recommending this from my personal experience. So now let's compare seeds online versus offline. What would be more economical or better for you? So buying offline will save you almost 50% of the amount. To give you an example, I had bought spinach seeds online as well as local nursery. Cost at local store was 500 and online was rupees 80. Online store will charge you 60 for shipping, except for minimum quantity requirement to get free shipping. So local nursery is always better. However, there are many seeds which you will find only online and very few local nurseries have them. Exotic vegetables is the biggest example, such as lettuce, bok choy, etc. So conclusion, if you want desi or local seeds, then buy offline. And if you want exotic seeds, then buy online. How plants function. The ancient thinkers wondered how plants grow. Although there is much that we do know about plants and how they grow, but there is still much that we do not thoroughly understand. So here's a question and a situation for you. What if you couldn't move? You can think of all the possible scenarios. So here are a few possible outcomes or scenarios that you would have thought about. First, you would not be able to go to a bathroom. Maybe you wouldn't be able to get food and water. You won't be able to deal with temperature changes as well. You won't be able to reproduce. Does that mean that you would need a proper caretaker? I believe the answer is yes. So that's your role when you take up farming or gardening in any capacity. Growing plants at any level and seeing them go through all stages is a different feeling altogether. Since you will be the caretaker, there are basic requirements that you should be aware of. The first basic requirement is root temperature. Too cold root zone temperatures will slow or stunt plant growth and restrict nutrient uptake. Too warm root zone temperature will hamper oxygen availability and cause plant stress. The stress will put the plant at a risk of disease or cause premature seeding called bolting. Hence, the ideal temperature is between 24 degrees Celsius to 30 degrees Celsius. Second is water. Water is the blood of a plant. It carries nutrients for the plant. The majority of plant weight is made up of water. Hence, plants which are grown in clean water tend to grow faster and healthier. The quality of water will determine success or failure of the crop or the hydroponic farm. Next is airflow. Proper oxygenation of nutrient solution is important for all types of hydroponic systems, especially recirculating systems such as NFT. Dissolved oxygen is the primary means of survival for root systems, which are permanently submerged in a nutrient solution. Failure to adequately aerate a nutrient solution can lead to suffocation, root death, and loss of crop. Fourth is light. Artificial lighting or grow lights are used in hydroponics to stimulate plant growth by emitting an electromagnetic spectrum appropriate for photosynthesis. In all stages of plant growth, plants need spectral energy, that is, light between 400 nanometer to 700 nanometer. This is technically known as photosynthetically active radiation or PAR. After that comes humidity. The level of air humidity affects the rate of plant transpiration, water uptake, transportation of nutrient, and overall growth of a crop. Growers should aim to maintain humidity between 55 to 75% depending on crop type and age of the plants. If carbon filters are used to filter outgoing air, humidity should be kept under 70% to enhance their performance. Then comes CO2. Almost all hydroponic growing should have CO2 enrichment. When CO2 is maintained between 1100 to 1500 ppm during the light phase, the increase in yield is incredible. In many cases, crop yields can be increased by at least 40% depending from crop to crop, with a marked reduce in growth time. Then comes air temperature. Inlet fans should be used to provide fresh, cool air into the grow room, and extraction or exhaust fans should be used to remove any warm or stale air. The balance of these fans is important. The extraction or exhaust fan should always be removing more air than what is coming in through the inlet fan so as to create a negative pressure. Last but the most important comes fertilizers. In hydroponics, the balanced nutrient solution that is fed to the plants through the root zone is usually the only nutrition that is required. Foliar feeding can be used to supplement an existing nutrient solution feed program. Then we'll take a look at root and shoot system of a plant. Plants have two organ systems. First is the root system, second is the shoot system. Both have different and distinct functions. So the first is the root system. It is based below the ground, or normally it is below the growing medium. So there are two types of roots mainly, tap roots and fibrous roots. And the functions of root system are anchoring the plant, then absorbing water and nutrients from the soil or the nutrient solution, and transport them upwards through the shoot system. And last, it's storing for photosynthesis. Then second comes shoot system. The shoot system includes such as leaves, buds, stems, flowers, and fruits, and it develops above the ground. Functions of shoot system are photosynthesis, reproduction, storage, transport, hormone production. Now let's take a look at photosynthesis within a hydroponic system. A plant growth is the process of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis converts sugar and oxygen from carbon dioxide, nutrition, and water using energy from light. The rate of photosynthesis is affected by external factors such as temperature, air movement over the leaf surfaces, level of CO2 in the air around the leaves, light intensity and its wavelength composition, and water status in the plant. In a hydroponic system, the light energy is typically provided by an artificial lighting source. Photosynthesis occurs primarily in green leaves and not in other green portions such as stems. So now we'll understand the life cycle of a plant. So the first is seed. The seed requires water, oxygen, and optimum temperature for its germination. A temperature of 24 to 32 degrees Celsius is optimum for germination. Water hydrates the enzymes and food supplies, and the seed becomes activated. Then it's sprouting. Seeds contain all the nutrients it needs to germinate and grow their first pair of leaves. Then is the seedling stage. As roots begin to develop and spread, plants need a boost of quickly absorbed and well balanced nutrients. Next is vegetative stage. Now that the root system can support growth, the vegetative stage begins. Nitrogen is the most important nutrient for plants when the energy is directed towards growing stems and foliage. The most substantial growth over the life cycle of the plant occurs in the vegetative stage and will continue unless there is a change in environment or lack of water and nutrients. There is a budding stage between vegetative and flowering. Plants need extra phosphorus during this transition to the flowering stage. So the next is the flowering stage. This marks the start of reproductive phase of the plant. Potassium is essential for development of flowers and fruit. The flower production stage refers to the stage where plants produce their flower. The first flower bud opens. Additional flower buds continue opening throughout bloom period until the point where the flower production typically ends. Then is fruiting stage. This is the final stage where the plant produces fruits. At this stage, the plant requires more nutrients such as phosphorus and potassium. Nitrogen is no longer the main nutrient the plant needs, so we need to boost up their nutrients like phosphorus and potassium. This is the stage when gardeners harvest their plants. Substrate science. Hydroponics used to be considered a system where there was no growing media at all, such as the nutrient filled technique in vegetables. But today it's accepted that a soilless growing medium is often used to support the plant root system physically and provide for a favorable buffer of solution around the root system. So what makes an ideal growing or supporting media? Where hydroponic substrates are concerned, three properties play a very important role in determining ideal growing or supporting media. First is water holding capacity. It is the amount of water that a growing media can hold for plant use. Growing media that holds generous amounts of water are less subject to leaching losses of nutrients. Second is air-filled porosity. The air-filled porosity of a growing media is the percentage of its volume, that is air, after being saturated with water and just after it has stopped raining. Next is cation exchange capacity. It determines a substrate's buffering capacity. Buffering refers to the resistance to change in pH or nutrient concentration in the substrate. So what is the best substrate for hydroponics? In simple words, a good substrate is it is good in aeration, drainage and moisture retention. It should be lightweight and then it should be reusable, should be environment friendly, it should be pH neutral and lastly it should be economical. So let's understand the most commonly used substrates in hydroponics. We will also learn pros and cons of these substrates. So the first substrate is Rockwool. Rockwool owns many benefits of an ideal growing material like microimmunity, good water and air retention. This protects the plants from dehydrating while giving plant roots continuous available amounts of oxygen. The pros of Rockwools are it has great water absorption and aeration capacity. It is a great seed starter. Germination rates in Rockwool are generally higher. It has great water retention capacity. And the cons? It is not environment friendly. The dust is not good for the health. It can be relatively expensive as well. If we talk about usability, you can use it in almost any system except aquaponics. The next substrate on our list is Oasis Cube. Oasis cubes have properties similar to rockwool. Being an open cell material, Oasis cubes can absorb water and air. The roots can easily grow and expand within the medium's open cell structure. The pros of Oasis cubes are it is inexpensive, it has good water and air holding capacity, and pre-soaking is not required. Although it is mentioned it is not required, but when I use Oasis cubes, I soak it for around 5 to 10 minutes. Then I let all the water drain and then I plant seeds for germination. The cons, they are not sustainable and not organic. Usability wise, just like Rockwool, you can use almost any system except for aquaponics. The next substrate on our list is perlite. Perlite is a very common growing medium that has been around for years, usually used by traditional gardeners to add aeration. It is very lightweight and porous. So the pros of perlite are it is lightweight, it is relatively inexpensive, and it has high oxygen retention level capacity. Cons, It is too lightweight for certain hydroponic systems. Another con is the dust from the medium, and it has a potential particle inhalation danger. Usability: it can be used in drip systems and aeroponic systems. Next is vermiculite. Vermiculite is non-toxic, sterile, moist resistant, and has a nearly neutral pH. What's more, the material is very lightweight and able to hold water very well, which is quite contrasting to perlite. Yet it does not keep aeration as well as perlite. Pros: water retention. It has good water retention property. It is very good at retaining nutrients as well. Cons: it has poor drainage capacity and there is danger of suffocating plants. Usability: you can use it for almost any system except aquaponics. Next is clay pellets. Clay pellets are created by heating and expanding clays to form thousands of small bubble shaped balls. They are lightweight but strong to give support. The pros of clay pellets are: it is pH neutral, it is easy to plant in, easy to clean and sterile. It has effective water drainage and air retention properties. It is reusable and there are no added fibers or solvents. The cons: it drains and dries very fast. The roots may dry out. It has poor moisture retention capacity and it is comparatively expensive. Usability: it is best used in all hydroponic systems. Next is netted coco coins. Cocopeat filled in a biodegradable porous non-woven fabric tubes and compressed to small coin-sized pellets. Cocopeat seed starters are specifically designed for use in seedling trays, aiding the germination process and seedling growth. So the pros of netted coco coins are: it increases oxygen levels, it doesn't interfere with nutrients, it enhances root development and decreases soil weight. The cons: you need frequent pH testing, there is increased of watering and it requires more attention. You can use it for almost any system except aquaponics. So next is last most important and most commonly used substrate in hydroponics. The most efficient growing media for hydroponics is because it's totally organic, highly inert and holds water very well. Coconut coir can be used alone or mixed with other growing media like perlite, expanded clay pellets. A common formula used by growers is 50% of the coconut fiber and 50% clay pellets. The pros of cocopeat are: it is pH neutral, it holds moisture very well and allows good aeration. It is organic material and it is environment friendly. Talking about cons, it doesn't drain well, so often mixed with other media. It has very high water holding capacity. And if we talk about usability, it can be used in drip systems, aquaponic systems, ebb and flow system. In this part, we will study types of nutrients, their role in plant growth, and symptoms of deficiencies. There are three types of nutrients: mobile, variable, and immobile. So when we talk about the list of mobile nutrients, there is nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, iron, and chlorine. Then we have variable nutrients which includes copper, zinc, sulphur, and molybdenum. And immobile nutrients include calcium, boron, and manganese. So let's understand what is mobile, variable, and immobile nutrients. Mobile nutrients. Mobile nutrients are nutrients that move to areas where it is lacking and they move from older leaves to younger tissues. Then comes variable. So retranslocation depends on degrees of deficiencies. There is little or no movement out of old leaves. And last, immobile nutrients. These nutrients cannot move. They are generally found in newer leaves. Nutrients such as nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium are readily translocated from old leaves to new growth. Hence, symptoms of these deficiencies occurs initially in the older leaves. Nutrients such as calcium, boron, and manganese do not appear to be retranslocated from old leaves to new growth under any circumstances. Hence, for these nutrients, deficiency symptoms occur generally in young growing areas of the plant. For many nutrients, the extent of retranslocation is variable and it depends on the degree of deficiency, the plant species, and the nitrogen status of the plant. For example, there is little or no movement of copper, zinc, or molybdenum out of old leaves of deficient plants. For these nutrients, symptoms will occur mainly in young tissues. Now let's look at the abnormalities in leaf. There are majorly six types of abnormalities observed in leaves. The first one is interveinal chlorosis. Interveinal chlorosis is yellowing of the leaves between the veins, with the veins remaining green. Next is chlorosis of veins. The leaf will turn yellow, followed by the death of the leaf. Now, when we talk about chlorosis of veins, you can see here that only the veins are yellow and the rest of the part is green. However, later on the leaf will die. Then comes chlorosis of margin. So here if you see only the margins are yellow or the borders are yellow, neither the veins nor the other tissues are yellow. So these are three types of chlorosis. Chlorosis is basically yellowing of leaf tissues. So there are interveinal chlorosis, chlorosis of veins, and chlorosis of margins. Moving on to the other three types of abnormalities, then there is necrosis. Necrosis is the death of body tissue. It occurs when too little nutrient flows to the tissue. This can be from radiation or in reaction of chemicals. Necrosis cannot be reversed. Next is purple petiole. Purple coloration on stems and petioles can be one of the signs of magnesium deficiency. It is also a sign that the plant is producing natural purple pigments in response to UV light. The last one is tip burn. Tip burn is the result of inadequate calcium reaching the outer areas of the leaves. When plants so affected are placed under stress, normally during high temperatures and moisture stress, the edges of young soft growth collapse. So these were the six types of abnormalities observed in leaf, and these are not just the six types, there are many other. These are the six most commonly found abnormalities. So now let's take a look at the role of nutrients, their deficiencies, and the symptoms. Primary macronutrients. Nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium are the most essential nutrients that a plant needs to grow. They play a vital role in plants' development and they are needed in different ratios at different stages. So let's take a look at the first nutrient, nitrogen. It is a mobile nutrient. The first and the most important nutrient is nitrogen. Nitrogen is one of the essential mineral nutrients that a plant requires for healthy growth and unfortunately is often in limited supply. It is taken up through a plant's root system from its growing medium in both soil and hydroponic growing systems. Nitrogen is a mobile nutrient wherein it can move around and it is at this point that the plant is breaking down its last reserves in the old leaves in order to transport it to the fresh young leaves. Nitrogen is extremely vital in the health of our plants because it is a major component of chlorophyll, the compound by which plants use their light source energy to produce sugars from water and carbon dioxide. Without enough nitrogen, our plants are unable to convert the energy from light. which is one of the biggest factors in enabling them to grow and thrive. So, what are the deficiencies? Now, where do you look? You look at lower or older leaves, you look at the stem, and you look at the overall plant growth. And what to look for? Older leaves become yellow or chlorotic from lack of chlorophyll. Stems, petioles, and lower leaf surfaces may turn purple. What are the effects? A nitrogen deficiency is one of the most common deficiencies found in plants. It initially affects older leaves and they will begin to turn yellow in color. The nitrogen deficiency will progress up the plant and only the new growth at the top will appear to be green. The lower leaves will continue to turn yellow, wilt, and eventually die. Death of the leaves starts at the tips and goes inward. You may notice that new leaves are smaller in size and overall growth of the plant is stunted. Plant cell tissue is made up largely of nitrogen, so overall growth of plants is affected quickly when a nitrogen deficiency is present. Next is phosphorus. Phosphorus is also a mobile nutrient. Phosphorus is essential for plants to transport the energy they produce from light during photosynthesis throughout the plant. Second only to nitrogen, phosphorus is the most essential nutrient to guarantee optimal growth, health, and function of our plants. It is one of the key elements required for just about every plant. Phosphorus a mobile nutrient, which means that if a plant is deficient, it will transfer phosphorus from other parts of the plant to areas it is needed in. It is one of the main components of plant DNA, and plants generally have higher concentration in root tips, growing shoots, and vascular tissues. Phosphorus is vital for hardy growth of the plant, and it is vital for healthy root development and plant cell activities. It also affects germination and bloom production. For young plants, the presence of phosphate is indispensable. Phosphorus is one of the three main macronutrients most often found in fertilizers. Without adequate amounts of phosphorus, your crops will fail. Deficiencies. You normally look at older leaves and grow tips, and you look for that if the plants are stunted and older leaves often dark or dull green in color. Stems and leaf stalk may turn purple. Plant maturity is often delayed. Phosphorus deficiency results in stunted growth similar to nitrogen deficiency. Plants remain a very poor size. Leaf color appears to change from normal to dull dark green or bluish green with a purplish color of petiole and veins on leaves. The older leaves, located near the bottom of the plant, will be the first to show signs of phosphorus deficiencies, gradually moving upwards to new growth. In fruit-bearing plants and plants that bloom, flowers may still be produced, but any blooms will be smaller and in less abundance. Leaves may also begin to curl downward. In extreme cases, they will become necrotic and fall off. Potassium. It is also a type of mobile nutrient. Potassium is an essential macronutrient that is vital for optimal plant growth. Potassium is used in all stages of growth and promotes a resistance to bacteria and molds. It is also a mobile nutrient, meaning that when deficient, plants can move the nutrient within the plant. Potassium is a nutrient that is ultimately responsible for stimulation of early growth in plants and aids in movement of water throughout the plant. It aids in combining sugars, starches, and carbohydrates, and is also essential for cell division. Without sufficient and adequate amounts of potassium, growth is stunted and yields are reduced. It supports a plant's immune system, which is an important factor even in indoor gardening. When a plants are receiving proper amounts, they are able to grow faster, promote stronger defenses against diseases, and display stronger overall plant growth. So when there is potassium deficiencies, you look on the outside edges of lower, older leaves and you look for yellowing and dead areas, curled edges, necrosis, or death of growth tip. Potassium deficiency results in very stunted plant growth and yellow or purple tinted leaves. Older, low leaves look wilted with browning and curling at leaf edges and yellowing between leaf veins and around leaf edges. Left unchecked, older leaves will begin to die off and symptoms will progress to upper, younger leaves. Deficiencies leave the plant poor disease and infection resistance. So this was about the role, type and deficiency of the three most important nutrients: nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium. Now we will take a look at three secondary macronutrients: magnesium, sulfur, calcium. Magnesium is a type of mobile nutrient. Magnesium is one of the vital nutrients needed for optimal chlorophyll health. Magnesium is one of the essential mineral nutrients taken up through a plant's root system from its growing medium in both soil and hydroponic growing systems. Oftentimes, not enough magnesium is present in the soil or water, and it becomes necessary to supplement with additional magnesium. Now, magnesium plays an important role in the health of our plants. It is one of the key components in how our plants convert the energy from its light sources into energy to grow and thrive. Chlorophyll gives the green pigment found in all plant leaves that enables the plant to absorb and convert energy from light into useful sugars, enzymes, and carbohydrates to grow. Deficiencies: you need to look at lower or older leaves, and you need to look for yellowing of leaves and leaves falling off or curling of leaves or necrosis spots. A magnesium deficiency can be diagnosed by examining our plant leaves. The great news is a magnesium deficiency is easily identifiable. When plants aren't receiving sufficient amounts of magnesium at their roots, they will begin to degrade the chlorophyll in the oldest leaves first. This is a condition called chlorosis, in which the leaves begin to look yellow, yellow-white, pale, and have a marbled, stripped appearance between the leaf veins. This process will often start in the lower regions of the plant first. As deficiency persists, leaves will begin to curl under and die off. Next is sulfur. Sulfur is a variable mobile nutrient. Even though sulfur is classified as a secondary nutrient, it is often referred to as the fourth major nutrient necessary for plant health alongside nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Sulfur is a nutrient that is required for the production of chlorophyll. The sulfur that is present in plants supports the formation of important enzymes necessary for the development of plant proteins. Sulfur is also a partner in the metabolism of nitrogen in plants. It is utilized by the plant to produce cells, seeds, and hormones and vitamins including B1. For sulfur deficiency, you need to look at new leaves or leaf veins, and you need to look at yellowing and lighter leaf veins. Sulfur deficiency results in yellowing of the upper younger leaves. Leaf veins may appear lighter in color than the surrounding areas of the leaf. The visual symptoms of a sulfur deficiency are very similar to the chlorosis found in the nitrogen deficiency. To decipher between the two, take note of where the discoloration is occurring. A sulfur deficiency should not be confused with a nitrogen deficiency, which appears first in lower older leaves before spreading to the whole plant. A sulfur deficiency will present itself first on the upper leaves. Calcium. Calcium is a type of immobile nutrient. Calcium is responsible for the structure of a plant's cell walls. It is a component that is essential for the development of new plant tissue. Calcium is oftentimes an underestimated nutrient that is very important to plant growth. We usually focus our efforts on supplementing and feeding our plants the primary three, that is, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. However, calcium plays a huge role in optimal plant and health growth. Simultaneously, calcium preserves membrane permeability, allowing the proper flow of nitrogen and sugars throughout the plant. It also stimulates enzymes that build strong root structures. Calcium is an immobile nutrient, meaning that the plant cannot transport calcium from one area to another inside the plant. Deficiencies: you need to look at new leaves and overall plant growth. You need to look for irregular shaped leaves and lack of new growth. Young leaves are affected first and become small and distorted or chlorotic with irregular margins, spotting, or necrotic areas. Signs of a calcium deficiency can be detected on the upper, younger leaves and on the overall plant growth. Symptoms result in slight yellowing and tips of leaves will burn brown to black and die off. Calcium deficiencies cause the new leaves at the top of the plant to look misshapen. Crinkled, distorted leaves with curled tips are a definite sign of a deficiency. Growth of the plant as a whole will be stunted as a deficiency will fail to promote the growth of lateral shoots. Take a look at micronutrients. In micronutrients, we'll study more about boron, chlorine, molybdenum, iron, manganese, zinc, and copper. So let's take a look at boron first. Boron is a type of immobile nutrient. Boron is an essential micronutrient necessary for optimal plant growth and development, but is required in very small quantities. Boron's role in the plant is not fully understood. When a boron deficiency is detected, it becomes necessary to supplement with additional boron. Nearly all of a plant's boron is found in its cell walls, and its most important role is aiding in cell wall formation, functioning, and strength. Because of this, a boron deficiency will cause overall reduced plant development and result in non-productive plants. Potassium and phosphorus nutrition is enhanced by boron. Boron plays a significant role in maintaining proper functioning and the strength of plant cell walls. It also has a positive impact on root uptake of potassium and phosphorus, two vital macronutrients for our plants. Deficiencies: you need to look at stems and leaf edges of younger leaves, and you need to look for cracked, hollow stems and black or brown edges on the tips of leaves, wrinkling of leaves or leaf curl. Boron deficiency will still allow the plant to grow to a reasonable size, but in a weaker state. You will experience death at growing points, and flowers and birds will fail to develop. Leaf symptoms of boron deficiency will appear in the young leaves. Slight yellowing may occur, and the tips of leaves will turn brown to black and die off. The stems may also be affected by becoming brittle, displaying cracks along the surface of the stem, or becoming hollow. Chlorine. Chlorine is an immobile nutrient. The role of chloride anion is essentially to chemically balance the potassium ion concentration that increases in the guard cells during the opening and closing of stomata. Chloride also functions in photosynthesis, specifically in the water splitting system. Chloride functions in cation balance and transport within the plant. Chloride competes with nitrate uptake, tending to promote the use of ammonium nitrogen. Lowering nitrate uptake may be a factor in chloride's role in disease suppression, since high plant nitrates have been associated with disease severity. For chlorine deficiencies, you need to look at stems and leaves, and you need to look for wilted, chlorotic leaves which will become bronze in color. The roots may become stunted and thicken near tips. The effects of chlorine deficiency would be like wilting due to a restricted and highly branched root system, often with stubby tips. Identifying chloride deficiency in plant is difficult because the symptoms of this deficiency are similar to the symptoms of many common plant disease. Your plants may be chloride deficient if you notice small, white necrotic spots along the edges of plants' leaves. Unlike leaf spot diseases, spots associated with chloride deficiency tend to have distinct boundaries between the marks and the rest of the healthy leaf tissue. Some plants exhibit species-specific symptoms, such as cabbage lacking its distinctive smell, indicating a chloride deficiency. Molybdenum. Molybdenum is a variable mobile nutrient. Molybdenum is required to convert the nitrogen that is taken up by the plant into ammonia, a process that is required for plants to function and thrive. For molybdenum deficiencies, you need to look at lower, older leaves and middle leaves. You need to look for yellowing of leaves between the veins, leaf curl, and there might be pale green leaf color as well. Molybdenum deficiency symptoms begin in the older leaves at the bottom of the plant. The leaves will appear yellow and oftentimes the rest of the plant appears light green as the deficiency progresses. Often interveinal chlorosis, which occurs first on older leaves, then progressing to the entire plant, developing severely twisted younger leaves which eventually die. Iron. Iron is a type of mobile nutrient. Iron helps to transport important elements throughout a plant's circulatory system, much like bloodstream in a human body. Iron is a micronutrient that all plants need to thrive. Many of a plant's most important functions such as chlorophyll production, nitrogen fixing, metabolism, and overall development are dependent on the micronutrient iron. Without the appropriate presence of iron, the plant will not be able to grow and function as well as it should. Even though plants only need a tiny amount of iron to thrive, that small amount is crucial. Iron is necessary for a plant to produce chlorophyll, which is responsible for giving a plant oxygen and color. Deficiencies. For iron deficiencies, you need to look at new leaves and you need to look for yellowing of leaves in margins between veins, giving a mottled or marbled appearance. Or you can also check for necrosis spots. Iron deficiency symptoms appear on the upper, younger leaves. Because iron is essential to the production of chlorophyll in the leaves, and iron deficiency is primarily revealed as yellowing between the veins of leaves. Larger veins in the leaves will remain green. In time, if not remedied, the leaves become pale and start to die back, eventually resulting in stunting and dying back of the entire plant. High copper, manganese, and zinc can create an iron deficiency as well as waterlogged grow media. Manganese is a type of mobile nutrient. It is one of the essential elements that are the building blocks and works to manage the growth process of plants. Manganese plays a crucial role in the oxidation reduction process of photosynthesis. The role of manganese in plants is crucial for most plants to grow and reproduce. Manganese is an activator of enzymes used during chlorophyll production and is responsible for aiding in the absorption of light to provide energy for photosynthesis. Manganese is used by plants for several important processes responsible for health and development, including nitrogen metabolization, respiration functions, and is essential to photosynthesis. It plays an important part in the chloroplast membrane system. Deficiencies. For manganese deficiencies, you need to look at new leaves and you need to look for yellowing of leaves between the veins You need to look for netted appearance and stunted growth. You also need to check for necrosis spots. Manganese deficiency symptoms begin with yellowing of upper, young leaves between the leaf veins. The leaf will start a netted appearance because the veins of the leaves will remain green. Buds may not develop and will fall off. Overall, there can be a reduction in the size of the plant. Severe cases can appear to look like a magnesium deficiency. An excess of iron can also cause a deficiency. The condition is further made worse by cold and high levels of pH. Interveinal chlorosis on younger or older leaves followed by necrotic lesions or leaf shedding. Restricted growth and failure to mature normally can also result. Zinc. Zinc is a type of variable mobile nutrient. Zinc works with magnesium, manganese, and iron to promote enzyme, chlorophyll, sugar, and protein production. So it is necessary both in the vegetative phase and flowering phase of your crop cycle. Although zinc is a mobile micronutrient, its deficiencies do not appear in older growth first like other mobile nutrients like nitrogen. Since it's instrumental in making chlorophyll for new growth with iron and manganese, which are immobile micronutrients, zinc deficiencies begin in the younger leaves and can easily be confused for deficiencies in the other two elements. Deficiencies: you need to look at new leaves, flower buds, and older leaves. You need to look for yellowing, dead leaf tips, dead or dying blooms, and molting. Early zinc deficiencies appear in the newest leafy growth through interveinal chlorosis. Interveinal chlorosis can be identified by the darkening of veins throughout the leaf while the rest of it grows lighter. The newest leaves look weak, thin, and may grow horizontally. Bud and leaf production grind to a halt, and you may not notice any new growth at all for weeks. Since iron and manganese are the usual culprits when spotting deficiencies in new growth, zinc is easily overlooked. But remember, zinc is a mobile nutrient, meaning that the plant can move it from old growth to new, while iron and manganese are immobile, meaning it only affects new growth. Zinc. Zinc is a type of variable mobile nutrient. Zinc works with magnesium, manganese, and iron to promote enzyme, chlorophyll, sugar, and protein production. So it is necessary both in the vegetative phase and flowering phase of your crop cycle. Although zinc is a mobile micronutrient, its deficiencies do not appear in older growth first like other mobile nutrients like nitrogen. Since it's instrumental in making chlorophyll for new growth with iron and manganese, which are immobile micronutrients, zinc deficiencies begin in the younger leaves and can easily be confused for deficiencies in the other two elements. Deficiencies: you need to look at new leaves, flower buds, and older leaves. You need to look for yellowing, dead leaf tips, dead or dying blooms, and molting. Early zinc deficiencies appear in the newest leafy growth through interveinal chlorosis. Interveinal chlorosis can be identified by the darkening of veins throughout the leaf while the rest of it grows lighter. The newest leaves look weak, thin, and may grow horizontally. Bud and leaf production grind to a halt, and you may not notice any new growth at all for weeks. Since iron and manganese are the usual culprits when spotting deficiencies in new growth, zinc is easily overlooked. But remember, zinc is a mobile nutrient, meaning that the plant can move it from old growth to new, while iron and manganese are immobile, meaning it only affects new growth. Copper. Copper is an immobile nutrient. Copper is an essential micronutrient for plant growth. It is taken up through a plant's root system from its growing medium and through its leaves in foliar applications. As copper is an immobile nutrient, it means that plants cannot transport it through their vascular system to the areas of the greatest need. For copper deficiencies, you need to look at new leaves, and you need to look for wilted appearance, yellowing and brown spots, and leaves curling under. A copper deficiency can be diagnosed by examining a plant leaves and growth pattern. A copper deficiency causes stunted growth and pale and yellow leaves that wither easily. The first signs of a copper deficiency typically appear on the younger and upper leaves, which will start to become yellow on their tips and margins. The leaf tips may eventually turn brown and curl under. Initially, just a few leaves may appear wilted, but it could lead to a full wilting of the plant even with adequate watering. New shoots will often die back in the early stages. Now we'll check about ideal growing conditions and practices for few crops. So the first one on our list is lettuce. If you are a beginner hydroponic enthusiast, growing lettuces are one of the best options to practice your gardening skills. Or if you are an experienced grower, lettuce growing can still be very satisfying and can even be turned into a stable, profitable business or additional income source. So let's take a look at few important factors that you need to consider while growing lettuce. So the first aspect is planting. You can germinate lettuce from seeds, and the best option that we recommend is either Rockwool or Oasis Cube. So the next is pH range. pH range is between 5.5 to 6.5. However, you should try to keep it at 6 just as a buffer in case if it goes up or down, you still have time. Next is harvesting. You can harvest lettuce as a head or even as a whole plant. Lettuce can be harvested quickly as a batch by taking the whole head. Many growers harvest the entire plant, including the roots, which can extend shelf life if the growing technique facilitates it. Lettuce needs cold, almost freezing, to extend the shelf life. However, it should be just above 0 degrees. Lettuce can stay fresh for up to 3 weeks this way, but don't let lettuce freeze. TDS. The range is between 560 to 840. However, you should increase it week by week as and when your plant grows. Next is light. The best suggestion to use the kind of light is 6500K LED light hours. Since it's a long day plant, it will require light of around 14 to 18 hours. However, 12 hours is also sufficient most of the time. Pest and disease. You need to take care of aphids, leaf miners, and powdery mildew. Temperature. Ideal temperature is between 18 to 24. However, lettuce can tolerate up to 28 degrees. Anything above 30 degrees is deadly for the plant. There are very less chances that your lettuce will survive if your temperature rises above 30 degrees. So this is the harvest cycle for lettuce. The germination takes approximately 7 days. The seedling to transplant takes between 10 to 14 days, and transplant to first harvest you can do it within 4 to 5 weeks depending. One important thing here is what percentage of maturity do you want for a particular plant. Like for some type of lettuce, 60% maturity will give you the best taste, crispiness, flavor and everything. So you need to decide and you need to understand what percent of maturity. 100% is ideally not recommended. If you're doing B2B or B2C, most of your clients will ask for 60 to 70% of maturity. Just like lettuce, you can germinate from seeds in Rockwool or in Oasis Cube. However, in basil, you can also start it from a clone. pH range is same 5.5 to 6.5. Harvest. Again, you can harvest lettuce as a whole plant or you can prune it as well. A prune plant looks better, yields more, and can be easier to transport depending on your growing method. If you prune a basil plant correctly, then you'll see an increase in yield each time you harvest for the first 3 harvests. Now try to eliminate all of bitter basil by harvesting before bolting to flower, throwing out any old or tough growth, or removing broken stems. Now, if we talk about storing post harvest, basil requires little lower than temperature to stay fresh. To extend shelf life of basil, store it at room temperature or at around 20 degrees Celsius. At this temperature, it can attain a shelf life of 12 days. So for harvesting or pruning, you can simply cut above the lateral buds so that these buds can start growing and it can give you multiple harvests. Next is TDS. The required TDS is between 700 to 1120. Just like I said before, increase your TDS gradually as and when the plant grows. Light. The light requirements are similar to lettuce. You can use a 6500K LED light and it would suffice. However, one important thing, you need to provide wattages as per your plant requirement. So we'll learn more about calculating wattages in the light section. So you'll get an idea of how much wattage you need to use. Light requirement is again similar to lettuce. However, approximately 12 hours will also do the job, but 14 or 18 hours is recommended or is best for plant growth. Pest and disease, nematode, aphids, snails, slugs, root rot, etc. Ideal temperature is between 18 to 24 degrees Celsius. However, even this plant can tolerate up to 28 or max 30 degrees. The life cycle of basil: germination 5 to 7 days, seedling to transplant 3 to 4 weeks, transplant to first harvest will take around 3 to 4 weeks, and first harvest to second harvest approximately 2 to 3 weeks. So you'll notice that the harvest time in the second harvest is faster than the first one. Parsley. Again, parsley can be germinated from seeds. As I've been repeating, Oasis Cube or Rockwool is the best way to germinate seeds. However, there are other options, but we recommend Oasis Cube or Rockwool. pH range again 5.5 to 6.5. Ideal is 6. So you have a buffer of 0.5 on either side if it goes up or down. Harvesting. You can have multiple harvest and twice before replanting. Now parsley can be harvested multiple times similar to basil. Use a harvesting knife to cut the crop down 2 to 3 inches from the media and keep the rest of the plant in the system to regrow. Another harvest may take about 3 weeks. We recommend starting a new cycle for parsley after the second harvest. Parsley yields can be very high in healthy hydroponic systems. Now storing post harvest, the leaves of parsley have to be frozen for longer shelf life. TDS, it should be between 700 to 1200 and increased gradually based on their growth. Light needs, same 6500K LED light would suffice because it needs more of blue and less of red. Light hours, recommended is between 14 to 18 hours, but 12 hours also does the job. Pest and disease, thrips and aphids. Ideal temperature is between 21 to 26. However, it can survive up till 28 or 30. Anything about that will most probably kill your plant or it will put some stress on it because of the difference between your root temperature and ambient temperature. So the life cycle of parsley: germination to seedling it take 2 to 3 weeks. This is higher compared to lettuce as well as basil. Seedling to transplant it will take 3 to 4 weeks. Transplant to first harvest is 5 to 8 weeks. And the time between first harvest and second harvest is 2 to 3 weeks. Strawberries. When we talk about planting strawberries, germinating from seeds is very difficult. Propagation from clone is easiest and fastest. pH range, ideal pH range is between 5.5 to 6.5. However, the most recommended is between 5.8 to 6.2. Harvesting. Multiple harvests are common through pruning. However, there is one important point that needs to be considered is pollination. For outdoor growers, they can rely on natural pollinators like bees, flies and birds to spread pollen from the male parts to the female parts of the strawberry plants. But for indoor growers, they will have to host a hive or they'll have to hand pollinate. So if you are growing in an indoor facility, one option is to hand pollinate. This can be done with a paintbrush or toothbrush. Lightly disturb the center of the flowers one after the other. This will spread pollen from flower to flower, replacing the role of pollinating bee or fly with your own effort. But hand pollination can take 10 to 30 seconds per plant. This can be time consuming on a large scale. So consider keeping bees in your indoor farm. TDS range is between 1260 to 1540 light. It initially needs blue light in vegetative stage, and once it starts blooming and fruiting it will need more of red light. The light requirements are between 8 to 12 hours. Pest and disease, spider mites, pythium, rhizoctonia and other fungal pathogens. Ideal temperature is between 20 degrees Celsius to 29 degrees Celsius. However, it can tolerate up to 30-32, not a problem. So the life cycle, rootstock to first harvest, 7 to 10 weeks. This we're talking from propagation. The time between first and second harvest is 1 week and second harvest to third harvest is 1 week. Tomatoes as a fruiting crop are nutrient hogs. Let's talk about their planting. In hydroponics, they are preferred to be grown from seedlings and indoors. Their pH range is 5.5 to 6.5. You must have seen this is common throughout all the plants that we've checked. So the ideal range is 5.5 to 6.5. Harvesting. Multiple harvests are common through pruning. However, post-harvest, tomatoes need cooling to extend shelf life, but shouldn't be refrigerated in typical fridge temperatures. TDS range is 1400 to 3500. A reason why we said tomatoes are nutrient hogs. This is the reason. This is highest across all the plants that we have seen so far. Light needs, just like strawberries, it will initially need blue when it is in vegetative stage or when it's growing, and once it starts blooming and fruiting, it will need more of red light. The required light hours are between 6 to 8 hours. Pest and disease, spider mites, pythium, rhizoctonia and other fungal pathogens. Ideal temperature is between 18 to 23, however it can tolerate again up to 28 or 30. Now if we talk about temperature, if you're growing outdoors in open field, then you need to control temperature, which is very difficult. But in case of polyhouse, you can take measures to bring your temperature down compared to your outside temperature. So having a polyhouse gives you advantage at multiple levels, and you can see over here one of the biggest advantages, you can control temperature, which is very difficult in a hot area like India. If we talk about the life cycle, germination to seedling 5 to 10 days, seedling to transplant 4 to 6 weeks, transplant to first harvest 4 to 5 weeks, and first harvest to second harvest 2 to 3 weeks. Now there is one pattern that you would have noticed is the time difference between first harvest and second harvest is always less. Lighting for plants. So before we get into the details of lighting for plants, I have a question for you. Can plants see? Let's check out the answer with a video. It's an excerpt from an online course that I completed recently.
Welcome back to the second week of What a Plant Knows. In this lecture today, we're going to talk about what a plant sees. And to start the lecture, I want you to think about this. Plants see you. Now, of course, I'm not talking about they see you like I see you or you see me on the lecture, But plants actually monitor their visible environment all the time. They see if you come near them. They see when you stand over them. They know if you've painted your house. They see if you've moved their pot from one side of the house to the other. They even know if you're wearing a red or a blue shirt. Now, of course, plants don't see in pictures like you and I do. So what do I mean when I say see? So this is the view from my office at Tel Aviv University. You can see here the Mediterranean in the background and the green part of the middle of the campus. We all agree that this is seeing for us. And if you were blind, this is what you would see. Nothing. No picture, only black. So we all agree that there's a difference between seeing and being blind. But let's redefine this. If we would take someone who's blind, who's only seeing this black here, what you see on your screen, and through some type of intervention, allow them to just differentiate between different shades of gray. For this person, even though he doesn't see pictures, would this be considered a form of rudimentary sight? Would this be a type of seeing? I think we can agree that seeing gray and white and black is better than seeing nothing. So it must be a type of simple sight. And if we could now allow this person to differentiate between red and blue, we maybe see the blue sky above and some colors below it, this is even a slight improvement on just seeing gray. So if we can agree that this is a form of sight, that sight even for people doesn't have to be only pictures, then I think we can definitely see or agree that plants do have a form of vision. While plants don't see in pictures like we do, they do see in many ways in colors that we can only imagine. For example, plants see the same UV light that gives us sunburns and infrared light that heats us up. These are two types of light that we are blind to. Plants can tell when there's very little light, like from a candle, or when there's strong light in the middle of the day, or when the sun's just about to set in the horizon. Plants know if the light is coming from the left, or from the right, or from above them. They even know if another plant has grown over them, blocking their light. And they know how long the lights have been on. What is sight for humans? So how did I catch this baseball? Light signals came from the ball, bounced off the ball into my eye, went from my eye through to the brain. The brain computed what was happening, sent a signal out to my hand, and luckily, I caught the ball. So what we have a detection of the light, a transfer of the light signal, and some type of response. What we see as light is actually part of the electromagnetic spectrum, and we actually only see a small part of that, what we call visible light. It goes from the blue light, which is about 400 nanometers, which are the shortest light waves, up to red light, which is about 700 nanometers, which is the longest light waves. But this is only, as I said, a small part of the electromagnetic spectrum. Smaller waves are what we see as ultraviolet light. We can't see those. All the way down to X-rays, which go through our body, and even from gamma rays coming from the universe. Longer light waves or longer electromagnetic waves can be infrared heat waves, again, which we're blind to. Microwaves, which heat our food. Radio waves, which can be even a kilometer in length, which we don't see either. So we only see a small part of the electromagnetic spectrum. When light is coming off the baseball, the light bounces off the baseball, goes in through my eye, and hits the retina. And from there, it sends the signal through the optic nerve. Within the retina, there are cells which are specifically attuned for what we call visible light. And these are the cone cells and the rod cells. The rod cells let us see black and white and different shades of gray, while the cone cells let us see color. There are actually three types of cone cells, some that see red, there's some that see green, and some that see blue. So for example, red light coming off the stitches of the baseball are absorbed only by the red cones, and then they send that signal to the brain, which we translate as a red color. If we see purple light, for example, coming through, the purple light would be absorbed both by the red cells and by the blue cone cells, and our brain translates that into purple. So human sight, again to repeat this, we have photoreceptors in the retina which absorb the light. The light is signaled to, the light signal is transferred to the brain. It's translated into pictures. And this signals some type of response. For in this case, I caught the ball. So we have perception, signal transduction, and a response. All right, now that we've gone through human sight, how do we know that plants see? And actually, I think most of you have seen plants responding to light. Like, let's take a look at this movie right here. What we have is a movie of bean seedlings that every 12 hours, the light is being changed from one side to the other. And as it's clear, you could see that the seedlings are starting to actually bend and follow where the sun is. Here now they've gone back the other one way, and in a second they'll go back the other way. So we really see the plants seeing the light and responding by growing and bending towards the light. Now, you might be surprised to learn that one of the first people to study how plants respond to light and how they bend was Charles Darwin. While you're all familiar with Darwin's work on evolution, what you're probably less familiar with is that the last 20, 30 years of his life, most of Darwin's research had to do with plant biology. And one of his most important works was published in 1880 together with his son, Francis Darwin. It's called The Power of Movement in Plants. And what Darwin noticed, and here he was studying many types of plants, but to take, for example, he was studying a certain type of grass called canary grass, that if you put the canary grass in a room with only a very dim candle on one side of the room, and I think Darwin wrote about it saying that it was so dim that he couldn't even see the clock on the wall, the plant, in this case the grass, bent towards the candle. Now, Darwin did this experiment on tens of types of plants, and he came to the following conclusion, and this is in his own words. Heliotropism, that's what we call the bending towards the light, prevails so extensively among higher plants that there are extremely few of which some part, either the stem, flower punticle, petiole, or leaf, does not bend towards a lateral light. Or in more modern English, what Darwin is saying here, that almost every type of plant is sensitive to light and will bend towards the light. But Darwin was not only the observer of nature, he was also an excellent experimentalist. And Darwin asked the following question: where is the eye of the plant? Which part of the plant is sensing the light in order to allow it to bend towards it? Now, Darwin's hypothesis was that the part of the plant that senses the light, what we would call the eye, of course, we're not talking about human eyes here, is at the tip of the plant. So what experiments could he do in order to test his hypothesis? Here's his observation, that when he puts lateral light from the side, the plant, in this case the seedling, bends towards it. His hypothesis was it's the tip of the plant. So the first thing he did was he chopped off the tip. And as you can see here, the plant lost the ability to bend towards the light. So what's the conclusion from such an experiment? Now, your conclusion might be that the plant, that obviously proves that the tip of the plant is what sees the light. But I got news for you. If I cut off your heads, you also lose the ability to see. So we need a few more experimental controls. So his first control that he did was he now covered the top of the plant with a hat, with a cap that was impermeable to light. And in this case, the plant also didn't bend. So does this prove or support Darwin's hypothesis that the tip of the plant is what's seeing the light? Well, it could be that that it does support it, but it could also be that this cap was so heavy that it inhibits the plant from responding. So he did another control. And this time, he covered the tip of the plant with a glass cap, which allowed light signals to go through. And under these conditions, lo and behold, the plant does bend. So we can see here in a very simple experiment with no huge technology that was published in 1880, Darwin successfully showed that it's the tip of the plant that senses the light signal, and somehow or another, it transfers this light energy or this light signal down to the bottom part of the plant, and that's where the bending occurs. So Darwin concluded that a signal moves from the tip to the base. In his own words, we must therefore conclude that when seedlings are freely exposed to lateral light, some influence is transmitted from the upper to the lower part, causing the latter to bend. Again, that's very verbose. What's he saying? That we must conclude that there is some way that the tip is sensing the light, is transducing a signal to the lower part, which is causing it to bend. So this isn't quite so different than what happens for us. When I caught the baseball, my eye sensed the light and sent the signal to my hand. In phototropism, the ability of the plant to bend to the light, the tip is sensing the signal and transferring that signal down the length of the plant to the part that's bending. So Darwin showed in his experiment that plants sense light and respond by bending to it. And this is a picture actually taken from his book in his own drawing, The Power of Movement in Plants. But now I want to go back to what I talked about in the beginning of today's lecture, that plants can differentiate between colors. And here's an experiment that was carried out by one of Darwin's colleagues, Jules von Sachs in Germany, in the late 19th century. And Sachs asked the question, can plants differentiate between different colors? And what he showed is that the same seedlings that Darwin studied will bend to blue light, but not to red light. In other words, plants, like humans, differentiate between different colors of light. Now, some of you may know people who are colorblind, and we know how that affects their life. So I want you to imagine for a second, what would be the behavior or the response of a plant that was colorblind?
Basics of plant lighting. It's important to understand basics of lighting and plants requirement before we decide on what color lights to use, how much lights to use, and for how long we should keep plants under light. So the first aspect of the basics is the color spectrum. Plant lighting comes in different spectrums measured in kelvins. Equal or less than 3000 kelvins are warm colors. Above 5000 kelvins are cool colors. Plants require different spectrum of light at different stages of their growth. Like in vegetative stage, it requires blue, and in flowering stage, it requires red. Moving on to the second aspect, duration under light. The amount of time needed depends on the plant. Most vegetables need at least 8 to 10 hours a day for a good and healthy growth. Some plants stay in vegetative stage until light source is decreased. Short and long day timings does affect on the duration of light availability to crops germination and growth. The third aspect is distance from the light. Some plants can do well in low light and be burned up when the light gets too intense. When the light is too intense, chlorophyll content reduces, which decreases the rate of photosynthesis, slowing the plant growth. So distance from light is decided based on stages, and the height between the light and the plant is usually different in seedling stage and vegetative stage and during germination. Characteristics of a light source. So the first important characteristics of a light source is light intensity. It relates to brightness, quality of photons, and it drives photosynthesis. The second characteristic is light quality. It relates to color composition, wavelength of photons, and it triggers development. You need to make sure that your plants are getting just the right intensity of light, as it will determine the efficiency of the photosynthesis that takes place. If your plants do not get the right intensity of light, they will only produce little amount of food and energy. This will significantly affect the growth of your plants. Light is in fact so necessary that plants actually grow towards it, like we saw in the previous experiment. So let's take a look at the electromagnetic spectrum. This is the electromagnetic spectrum. The small colorful line in between that you see is called the visible spectrum. Let's zoom in the visible spectrum. The visible spectrum is the light that we can see. Plants love the light, right? Yes and no. Plants do love the light, but they like some wavelengths of light more than the others. When you look at a rainbow, you can see that visible spectrum of light actually has different colors of wavelengths inside it. So let's understand what is PAR. PAR is photosynthetically active radiation. It is the amount of light available for photosynthesis, which is the light from 400 nanometer to 700 nanometer. So we are talking about the range from 400 to 700 nanometer. Now let's take a look at color temperature in degree Kelvin. The light generated by LEDs has a color of its own, the so-called light color or color temperature. The color temperature is being measured in Kelvin. As we learned earlier, color temperatures below 2800 kelvins are considered to be extra warm white. From 2800 to 3300 are known as warm white. From 3300 to 5300 as neutral white, and over 5300 as daylight white. So you can remember, the higher the color temperature in Kelvin, the more white the light. So let's take a look at sunlight. So if you check in the morning, it's between 2800 to 3300 kelvins. At noon, it's 3300 to 6000 kelvins. And in the evening, again it's 2800 to 3300 kelvins. So this is how it look like if we had lights for each color temperature starting from 1000 kelvins to 10,000 kelvins. Now we will try to understand the impact of color on the plant's life at different stages. So the first light color that we have is blue light. The blue spectrum is widely used when growing plants indoors, just as the red spectrum. This is known to help speed up the growth of your plants and is crucial when it comes to ensuring a plant's growth. In fact, this is necessary during the early cycle of your plants, as it helps with seeding and leaf growth. This light spectrum also helps with the production of chlorophyll, which also makes it essential during photosynthesis. This ensures the strength of your plant's roots, stems, and leaves. Without this spectrum, your seeds won't even raise from the ground and your plants will become weak and yellow in color. The next color is the red light color. This spectrum is best used during the flowering stage of your plants, as this have a longer wavelength than blue light. This spectrum is indeed important to your plant's growth, but using only this spectrum light won't really lead you somewhere good when it comes to growing plants. The red light always has to be partnered with the blue spectrum to ensure that your crops will be healthier. You will mainly see its efficacy during the later part of the cycle, when your plants are on its flowering stage. No matter what plant you are growing indoors, the most crucial colors needed are red and blue. Some sources say to have 10% blue and 90% red. Others say a 30% blue and 70% red is best. However, any specific ratio is still not known. The next light is violet light. Now we want lots of this color if we are growing edible plants. Why? Because violet gives you a better color, taste, and it makes them smell better. This color is as effective as the blue light when it comes to helping your plants grow. It is said to enhance the color, taste, and smell of your plants. With this said, the violet or purple light alone is not really ideal to use on its own, as this is more of an enhancer. This color is excellent to use during the vegetative process. Now, as we have studied the role of three lights, it is very important to understand what light will suit your requirement. Now you need light that has good amount of blue, red, and violet. So if you look at blue, the range of blue color is somewhere between 460 to 470 nanometer, as it triggers growth and boosts photosynthesis. Then comes red. The wavelength is 630 to 660 nanometer. It enhances photosynthesis during blooming and fruiting. Then we need violet, which is from 350 to 450 nanometer. It enhances color, taste and smell. Then we need UV, that is between 390 to 395 nanometer. Now UV is required for seedling and sterilization. And then we'll need IR, that is infrared. It is good for flower and fruit. So finally, to conclude, what light should you use for best results? The light that we recommend is a full spectrum 6500 Kelvin LED light. Why? Because it is highly energy efficient. The heat output is pretty low. The spectrum is red and blue. It has good amount of red, it has good amount of blue, and the resulting plants are healthy. So how long should plant be under light? This is a burning question that I see among the new hydroponic growers. Now it depends on the type of the plant that you are growing. If you plant as short day plants, these require a long period of darkness to photosynthesize and produce flowers. If they are exposed to over 12 hours of light per day, they will not flower. Some examples are strawberries, cauliflowers, and chrysanthemums. These are short day plants. The short day cycle mimics the environment in nature for plants, the flowering in the spring. Then comes the long day plants. These require up to 18 hours of sunlight per day. They include wheat, lettuce, potatoes, spinach, and turnips. The long day cycle mimics the natural environment of summer flowering plants. And then comes the third type, day neutral plants. These are the most flexible kind of plants. They produce fruit no matter how much light they are exposed to. Some examples include rice, eggplant, roses, and corn. If you must mix short and long day plants, it is best to compromise their needs and pick a lighting schedule that is right in the middle, around 14 hours of light per day. Distance between plants and lights. In general, LED grow lights should be 12 to 13 inches from the top of plants. As plants grow, you'll adjust your lights to maintain a consistent distance from the plants. However, the distance will vary depending on the wattage of your lights, the type of plant, and the amount of ambient light. As we've studied earlier, most LED grow lights produce the light in the blue and red portion of the spectrum, which is great to produce strong, green, and abundant leaves. The color of light needed by plants depends slightly on their stage of growth. Seedlings and young plants need more blue light to put energy into growing leaves and stems. During flowering and fruiting, plants need more red light. Typically, when plants start flowering and producing fruit, you need to move the LED light closer to the plant so it'll have more light available for photosynthesis and producing flowers and fruit. If your plants have light damage, you'll see symptoms such as your leaves will be pointing upwards. You'll notice bleaching, which takes the form of white or yellow discoloration, typically on the leaves closest to the light. The veins remain green even as the rest of the leaves turn yellow. So this is a chart which you can use as a guideline. The distance between the light and the plant will differ based on the wattage and the growth stage of the plant. How much light do I need for my growing space? It is important to understand that the number of actual watts that you need for your plants will vary depending on plant type. You need to understand if your plant is high light or low light. Highlight plants are like tomatoes, peppers, etc. And low light plants are herbs and leafy greens such as basil, lettuce. You also need to take into consideration your growth phase of your plant. You need to check if it's in seedling stage, vegetative or flowering stage, as all different stages require different amount of light. Then lastly you need the total area of your grow area. A larger grow area will require more power. So let's understand how much watt light you will need for your grow area. So for that, first you need to measure the length and width of your grow area. Then you need to calculate the square feet of your canopy or your grow area. You get the square footage of your canopy by multiplying the width of your canopy to the length of it. Once you have that, divide the square footage by the 4 square feet. Now this is what your each plant will need. You need to remember the 4 square feet per plant rule. In our example, the length is 20 square feet and the width is 12 square feet. So we multiplied 20 into 12, which gave us 240, and then we divided it by 4, which gave us 60 square feet of a growing space. Then you need to multiply a growing space by 65 watts. Now 65 watts is the ideal wattage, that is to give your plants optimum amount of light for best growing results. You need to provide 65 watts of light per square feet. So if we go by that rule, so for a 60 square feet area you will need 3900 watts. The final step is creating an even distribution of lights to your plants. Don't make the mistake on stacking them side by side. You need to space the lights evenly across the canopy. The next step is making sure you ventilate your grow room properly so you don't overheat your environment. Now this is something that many people ignore, or if they're new growers they do not realize this mistake. So you need to have a proper ventilation. Then next is you need to maintain a height distance as per the chart that we saw in the previous lecture. So we hope we have cleared all your doubts related to grow lights. We will share a downloadable light chart calculator to determine the amount of light you will need while growing.